Hello, I'm Dan Vevers from the Daily Records, and we are going about this general election campaign looking at key battleground seats. Now, today we are in East Lothian, although it's now actually called Lothian East. This is Labour's top target seat in Scotland, and they've brought in a political big beast to try and claim it, which is Douglas Alexander. But he's going to have stiff competition up against the SNP and also the Tories, who have been a close third here before. Now, in 2019, the SNP won this seat with Kenny McCaskill, but then he defected to Alex Salmond's Alba Party midway through Parliament. So now this time out, the SNP's candidate is going to be Lynn Jardine, who is the leader of the SNP in East Lothian Council. Now, we are going to go about this constituency today, speaking to voters and to candidates about what this election means for this county.
I'm going to vote Labour this time, for the first time in my life, actually.
So who were you voting for prior to this, if you don't mind me asking?
I've been an SNP voter for many years.
And what's made you change your mind this time out?
Because I feel that we need a change in Westminster, and while my heart is still with independence, I think for the time being it should be taking a back seat.
I'm not enamoured with the SNP. I'm not enamoured with Conservatives because of what happens down south. And Labour, well, if you vote for Labour, you may not get the people that you want in. That's where I'm coming from. So,
what would you say, are the big issues that are affecting voters here that they'll be wanting their politicians to sort out?
Houses, doctors, schools probably to a certain extent, although they have built a big school at Wallingford, so that'll maybe help. But certainly, they're building all these houses, which is fine for people that can afford them, but I know there's a lot of people that can't afford these houses.
Very, very long delays in getting anything done. The planning in East Lothian is absolutely ridiculous, beyond your wildest dreams. Building all these new houses, very little affordable houses. The infrastructure's not there. All of this is a bit of a worry, actually, to be honest with you. It's such a small community, really, although it's a big county.
We had the Conservatives partying through the pandemic, then we had 49 days of Liz Truss crashing the economy. But there are lots of people here in East Lothian who are still paying the price for that Conservative incompetence. And really, we've seen a government that combines cruelty and incompetence, and when you're on the doorsteps, as I am all the time, you meet an awful lot of people who are paying that price, whether that's in higher food bills, whether that's in higher fuel bills, or as I say, whether that's people rolling off fixed mortgages who find that their mortgage payments have shot up because of that economic mismanagement.
Yeah. There is an argument that people aren't just scunnered with the Conservatives or the SNP, but with all politicians and all politics.
You're absolutely right.
And although Labour look on course for a big majority, there's some who say that actually they're not particularly inspired by Keir Starmer or by the Labour message as yet. You're almost going to win by default. How do you convince those voters that you're truly on their side?
Well, I think it starts with listening to their concerns and understanding the issues that matter to them. But you're absolutely right. One of the biggest battles we face, not just against our political opponents, but is against an almost imprisoning cynicism that says it's rubbish, all that politicians do is make things worse for you, and that change and a sense that the country can be better is impossible. Now, I understand that feeling. We've had almost 16 years of SNP government here in Scotland. Genuinely can't think of an area of our public life here in Scotland that's got better. If you look at ferries or hospitals or our schools, and at the same time you look at, we've had 5 Prime Ministers and 3 general elections from the Conservatives. There's just a weariness, and people, what I sense on the doorstep is people feel both beaten up and beaten down by the politics that they've endured over the last few years, and that means that we approach this campaign with a huge amount of hard work, but also a sense of humility.
When we heard that Douglas was standing for Lothian East, it was like, oh, that's really interesting. Why is that? Because there are plenty of people locally who would be more than adequate for the challenge as well. So what we're hearing people say is they've already had a few years of somebody, and I appreciate that when they voted for Kenny McCaskill, they voted for him as an SNP member, but Kenny has been a high-profile individual, and obviously that contributed to the success of his campaign. But people don't necessarily feel the benefit of that in their MP necessarily. People that voted for Kenny as an SNP MP felt slightly betrayed, and I think the Labour Party putting up Douglas it risks for them someone being seen as more of the same. And certainly people on the back, I think it was last week, it was sort of highlighted that he's possibly a shoe-in for a ministerial post. Folk are like, well, why would you want somebody who is going to have their eye on that at a UK level than maybe actually the work that's required of an MP locally. So, and that's where I'm absolutely committed to the constituency. My raison d'etre, my entire life has been to serve. So that's kind of the big difference, I think, between us.
So the main concern is about infrastructure. They're seeing that the high growth rate, and they're seeing not the services coming with them. In fact, they're seeing services being cut, which I think is real of concern to a lot of people. Particularly recycling is a huge issue here. And in terms of my reception, I think a lot of people are quite liking a fresh face and a breath of fresh air coming in on this campaign. You know, we've obviously got former MPs running for this seat, and I think they want change. And the only way they can get change is for voting Conservative.
But of course, I mean, you have placed a strong third in some of the recent elections here. But you can be honest with me, this is going to be a tough one for the Tories this time out, isn't it, in Scotland?
Well, I think it should be tough for any political party. I mean, no party should ever take a vote for granted. And so that's how I'm fighting the campaign, on a tough fight here.
George Kerevan, you used to be the MP here for the SNP. You're back standing in Lothian East now for Alba. What's brought you back into the political fray?
Being MP for East Lothian was one of the proudest moments of my life. Very exciting. But you know, you spend a couple of years at Westminster, you realise how useless, how unreformable, how dysfunctional it is. So it's made me feel anxious to tell people independence not because an abstraction, oh, people talk the Constitution. We need independence because, I mean, our fishermen, our farmers here in East Lothian, we need independence to help them. We are an energy producer here in East Lothian. All the energy flows south, we get none of the benefits. So independence because we need to run our own affairs.
You've got a chance on July 4th to send a message to the politicians who are vying for your vote here. What would your message be to them today?
Just listen to the people, what they want. I mean, they've made it perfectly clear over the last few years. So at the end of the day, if they don't listen, put their head in the sand, then people will go the other way.
Do what you say you're going to do and do it quickly.
They need to listen to people because I think people are just fed up.